Mijinyawa gave the money to Malam Ibrahim to buy the property for him. The Malam Ibrahim squandered the money. The case was taken to court, and the court asked Malam Ibrahim to forfeit, Malam Abdullahi to forfeit his properties. The court forfeited his property and sold them off, and the sum of 18 million was raised, and the court gave the Deputy Controller of Police, Mr. Ibrahim Mijinyawa, 18 million to give to Ahmed Idris, which he has failed to do so. The court has issued a summons to the Commissioner of Police, Kano, to produce the Deputy Controller of Police, and has written equally to the Controller General of Customs to compel the appearance of Deputy Controller of Customs, Ibrahim Mijinyawa. On the resumed date of sitting, Ibrahim Mijinyawa has refused to appear in court, and he has not been brought to court by the Commissioner of Police, Kano, or the CG of Customs. And he felt, as a Nigerian citizen, this is the only place he can come and get justice. With your permission, Mr. Speaker, may I lay the petition?
Please proceed and lay the petition, Honorable Madeki. Honorable TJ, do you have a petition? Petition? Wow. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I'm TJ Yusuf. I represent the people of Kababunu Ijumufara constituency. Mr. Speaker, I have a petition on behalf of my constituents, Adamu Suleiman Yakubu, who believe that he was unjustly sacked by NUC. Mr. Speaker, he has brought a petition to this noble house to seek redress. With your kind permission and my colleagues, I appeal that you should allow me to lay the petition so that his appeal can be considered. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed and lay the petition. Any more petitions? No petition. Petitions referred to Committee on Public Petition. A point of order, Honorable TJ. Move your point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, my dear colleagues. I come on a matter of urgent national importance, Mr. Speaker. I appeal that the matter that borders on alleged multimillionaire contract scam that is rocking the Ministry of Defense deserve our attention so as to unravel whatever that is behind it, to perform our responsibility as entrenched in the Constitution, our responsibility which is to expose corruption and any infraction. Mr. Speaker, I appeal that the matter is urgent enough to be considered now, so I appeal that the regular rules will be suspended so that we'll take it now. So appeal, Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues.
Any seconder, Honorable Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. Hassan Saleh, representing ADOC of Badibo Bakufra constituency from Benue. I rise to second the motion, ably moved by Honorable TJ. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Any seconded second limb of the motion, I will suspend our rules to take it now. Honorable Rano.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, honorable colleagues. My name is Honorable Mohammed San Rano. I am from Kano State. I represent Rano Bunkuri and Kiva Federal Constituency. I rise to second the second leg of this motion that this House be taken immediately. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Honorable Teacher, you can now move your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My dear colleagues, I appreciate the privilege to take this matter now. Matter of urgent national importance need to investigate alleged multi-million naira contract scam in the Ministry of Defense. The House are aware that the entire media space was awash with an alleged duplication, misappropriation, and mismanagement of multi-million naira contracts in the Federal Ministry of Defense. Also aware that some high-ranking appointees and officials in the Ministry of Defense were allegedly involved in the contract scam that has gone viral and not in sync with the effort of the federal government to fight corruption. Observe that the contract was for the relocation and refurbishment of Level 2 hospital under United Nations Multidimensional Integrated Stabilization Mission in Mali. Also observed that the Level 2 hospital, which are funded by the United Nations and awarded to countries who contribute troops, police to global peace mission, carry out limited surgeries, including live, lamb, and organs on officers and men of military duties. Concerned that the scandal blew open following United Nations directive that Nigeria should move the Level 2 hospital from its present temporary camp at the Timbuktu airport in Mali to the more secure new United Nations super camp also in Timbuktu. Worried that in desperate bid to cover this tract, Ministry of Defense in February 2017 allegedly awarded a contract for the refurbishing and relocation of the hospital to a contractor who had zero experience in installation of Level 2 hospital. Also worried that the Ministry of Defense, apart from awarding the contract in the name of another firm after getting presidential approval, also flouted the procurement guideline of the Bureau of Public Procurement. Stopped that as a consequence for not meeting the United Nations August 17 deadline for relocation of the hospital to a new location, Nigeria has been asked to withdraw its remaining contingent to United Nations Africa Mission in Darfur. Also disturbed that the shady deals allegedly perpetrated by the top functionaries in the Ministry of Defense has led to Nigeria losing the deployment of Level 2 hospital to Rwanda as directed by the United Nations. Alarmed that while countries like Bangladesh, Ghana, Senegal, with fewer troop contribution to United Nations mission are earning huge foreign exchange, Nigeria, with one of the highest troop contingent, is not only losing money, but asked from participating in peacekeeping mission because of the activities of few individuals. Alarm also that due to the selfish and greedy antics of some officials of the Ministry of Defense, Nigeria has gone down from number 5 to number 9 in troop contributing countries globally rating, and dropping from number 1 in Africa to number 5 in Africa. The House therefore resolved to mandate the committees of Defense, Army, and Public Procurement to carry out a comprehensive investigation on the matter and report back to the House within 2 weeks. I so move, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Any seconder. Honorable Kurfi.
Right, Honorable Speaker, Honorable colleagues, my name is Honorable Dalai Mohammed Kurfi, member representing Dusama Kurfi. I'm from Kano State. I rise to second the move by Honorable Member. I so second. Thank you.
Honorable TJ.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues. Mr. Speaker, my interest in this matter is as it affects the image of Nigeria. As clearly stated in the body of the motion, Rwanda has been asked to take over the responsibility of that hospital. And that has led to dropping of Nigeria from number 1 to number 5 in Africa. It is a known fact that when one finger gets soiled, the remaining 4 are naturally condemned. Mr. Speaker, without attempting to compliment, Mr. Speaker, I so submit.
So this is an investigative motion. I will, Honorable Osai.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Distinguished honorable colleagues, I remain Honorable Osai Nicholas Osai. I represent the Plenary Federal Constituency of Delta State. Amendment is that public account should be added to the committee that will investigate the matter. Yeah, public accounts. We require issues of details of fraud. And public account is a major committee of this honorable house that do really auditings on behalf of the National Assembly. And the only committee also that is mentioned by the Constitution that is saddled with the power to investigate such matters. That is the essence of adding public account.
Well, it's an amendment, not for me to decide. Any seconder? So, no seconder, and I'll put the question. Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Honorable Chinda, your point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues. My point of order is seeking for your leave, sir, to bring a matter of urgent public importance and also to set aside our rules. Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, this is hinged on the fact that today marks 22 years that the foremost environmentalist in this country, Ken Saro-Wiwa, lost his life alongside the other Ogonis, including some chiefs who were murdered as a result of environmental issues. Mr. Speaker, I want us to use this opportunity to underscore the importance of environmental issues. And that's why I think that it is one, urgent and of national importance. We have problems all over the country, ranging from the northeast, the issues of Boko Haram, up to down south, the issues of militancy, all border on environmental issues. I would therefore crave this House to see this as an opportunity for us to look at these issues and also remember those who lost their lives as a result of this environmental degradation that is still affecting us today. Consider it as one that is urgent and important enough for us to discuss today. I therefore seek for your leave, my dear colleagues and Mr. Speaker. Thank you, sir.
I rise to second the motion that this matter is urgent enough to be taken today. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Honorable Chinda, please move the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Very grateful, my dear colleagues. The motion is remembering Ken Saro-Wiwa and the 8 other Ogonis 22 years after their death and the urgent need to expedite action on the cleanup of Ogoni land. The House notes with dismay the depopulation of Ogoni environment and indeed that of several other Niger Delta communities occasioned by decades of oil exploration activities in the region. The House also notes the gruesome murder of some Ogoni chiefs and elders, Chief Kobani and 8 others, and the consequent trial and death sentence on renowned writer and environmentalist Ken Saro-Wiwa and 8 other Ogonis on 10th November 1995 by the military government of late General Sani Abacha. The House further notes that following this, and at the request of the federal government of Nigeria, the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, conducted an independent assessment of Ogoni land and profiled options for remediation. The House is conscious of the clear provisions of Section 20 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which states that the state shall protect and improve the environment and safeguard the water, air, and land, forests, and wildlife of Nigeria, which environment, of course, includes the Niger Delta region. The House is aware that the UNEP study, amongst other things, showed the nature and extent of oil contamination and covered contaminated lands, groundwater, surface water, sediment, vegetation, air pollution, public health, industry practices, as well as implication of affected populations, and provides clear operational guidance as to how that could be addressed. The House is aware that UNEP field observation and scientific investigation found inter alia that oil contamination in Ogoniland and indeed across the Niger Delta is widespread and severely impacting many components of the environment. And that though the oil industry is no longer active in Ogoniland, oil spills continue to occur with alarming regularity, and the people live with this pollution daily. There is contaminated oil and groundwater. There are public health concerns, and the people are exposed to hydrocarbons in and outdoor, and drinking water, and also they are exposed to thermal contacts from contaminated soil sediments and water surface. The House is aware also that UNEP, having concluded its study 5 years ago, made numerous recommendations which, once implemented, would have an immediate and positive impact on Ogoniland. For example, the restoration of Ogoniland, remediation of enhanced natural attenuation. Land-based contamination should be dealt with first before beginning a cleanup of the creeks. The House is further aware that on August 4, 2011, UNEP presented its report to former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, and the report completely confirmed the claims of Ogoni people that neglectful environmental pollution laws and substandard inspection techniques of the federal authorities have led to the complete degradation of Ogoni environment, turning the environment into an ecological disaster. The House is concerned that 22 years after the death of Ken Saro-Wiwa and the 17 other Ogonis, nothing has changed, and Ogoniland and indeed other parts of Niger Delta is still highly devastated. The House is concerned that several years after presentation of UNEP reports, by hurriedly launching the cleanup process is cosmetic and at best a mere window dressing, that it has been largely ineffective, ineffectual, and short of expectation of the people and indeed the public. The House is disturbed that the Ogoni people and indeed the entire Niger Delta continue to drink contaminated water, and seafood is being scourged from the polluted water, and the community still processes their food in crude-coated creeks. The House is further disturbed that the situation is already generating ill feelings, despondency, and anger amongst Niger Delta people, and unless UNEP report is fully implemented, they would continue to suffer pain and feel alienated in their land, a situation that could further lead to a breakdown of law and order in the region. The House is called upon to resolve as follows.
Honorable Chinda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very grateful, my dear colleagues. I will start by reminding us that environmental pollution has no boundary. Though we use the Niger Delta as an example, but it is palpable today that issues of environmental pollution affect every part of our country. If we look at the Northeast, the issues of Boko Haram, you can clearly link that to issues of environmental degradation. And when it happens in one part of the country, the effect is universal. Pollution happening in Nigeria will affect the man that is in Europe. Of course, we talk about depletion of ozone layer today. It's as a result of the actions of man. In the Northeast, if you remember, before now, agriculture was booming, including aquatic life. People were fishing in the Northeast. If you go to the Lake Chad before now, a lot of aquatic life was going on there, and people were employed. But gradually, the Lake Chad basin is drying up, and people are pushed to look for greener pasture. And that is what is leading to the explosion we are seeing. It is still part of environmental issues that is leading to various crises across the world today. And these are persons that saw tomorrow when Ken Saro-Wiwa raised these issues. But unfortunately, their lives were cut short. The least we can do, my dear colleagues, is to continue to remember them and use them to remind ourselves of our conduct today and continue to improve on how we deal with our environment. That's why I have asked that we observe a minute silence as a remembrancer, and also use today to caution ourselves concerning our conduct towards our environment, so that we can continue to improve on what we have met on Mother Earth. I would not want to continue with this argument. I will only pray that will support this motion and take proactive steps to continue to safeguard our environment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Mukaila Kazim, please approach the chair. Honorable Aliu Madaki.
Mr. Speaker, my honorable colleague, I stand this morning to support this all-important motion brought by my honorable colleague because of certain reasons. The issue of justice, the issue of fairness, and the issue of equity for all. Mr. Speaker, my honorable colleague, as Nigerians, we are all aware the role played by state of Niger Delta to the development and well-being of Nigeria as a country. If we truly want Nigeria in such a way that they cannot use that land to farm, that area, in all honesty, need to be looked into. And every assistance that will be given by the federal government to that region and other regions like the Northeast that is suffering from the issue of Boko Haram, I believe is in the interest of all Nigerians. And that is what makes it very important for each and every one of us seated here that is representing a segment of this country to join hands in making sure that we turn every part of Nigeria, but most especially the Niger Delta, a place that will be of envy to all. Thank you very much.
Honorable Dr. Achibo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. My name is Dr. Henry Achibong. I rise to support, I represent the people of Itu, Ibiono Federal Constituency in the state of Akwa Ibom. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this all-important motion and to commend the mover of this motion. Mr. Speaker, this environmental issue covers everywhere in Nigeria. Now, I want to give one example, because I like being practical. Some years back, because when we talk of environment, we are not talking of only the air. We talk about the air and the ground, and under the ground. Mr. Speaker, some years back, I happened to have been treating somebody for typhoid fever. And I discovered that the more I treated, the more it was persistent. I gave all the drugs I needed to give, but the titers were still rising, and the person was still sick, and the whole family was sick. It took me until one day I was moving around, and then I saw that where he had his borehole, just after his fence, there was a very old soakaway that was there. And I believe that he must have had his own borehole years after that other soakaway had been sunk. I actually went and looked at it, and I discovered that the man had been drinking contaminated water because the underground water in which he was drinking was polluted. That is part of the environment. And how did this occur? Because nobody is interested in keeping standards to make sure that the required standards are being met. Sometimes, you see, even the people that are into construction, for instance, the road construction, by the time roads are constructed, by the time they pass through a stream or a river, most times you find out that the wetlands surrounding those rivers and ponds are dried up because nobody was able to monitor them to do a correct environmental impact assessment to know what is going to happen to the environment after the construction has been made. The issue is because we are not paying so much attention to the environment. Mr. Speaker, presently, oil is going down, and some countries in the world are beginning to look at solar cars, and they are testing it. And we are here solely dependent on oil. And we are not thinking about 2030 or 2050 when every country outside this Nigeria would have moved on to solar cars. And that's because they appreciate the importance of environment, and they are doing so much to check environment. You will agree with me that even in US, where Trump was not in support of environment, there is a lot of agitation against that because people are so much interested in making the environment green because of the importance of this environment. Here we are in the Niger Delta. When we have this Operation Crocodile Smile or Crocodile Cry, we find out that by the time they get to these creeks and they see these illegal refineries, a proper approach is not taken to see how these illegal refineries can be taken out cleanly so that the environment is not polluted. Granted that those that are refining illegally do not know the import of keeping the environment safe. The military will always destroy it. They set fire, they shoot at it and set fire. And we talked about the fact that people are poor and people enter into the bush to cut trees. As they are cutting up trees, they are reducing that aspect of the forest that removes carbon dioxide from the forest, thereby producing oxygen. And because of that, we find out that desertification is gradually increasing. So that at the end of the day, we begin to have a cycle that if we don't check it in Nigeria, we are going to have a lot of problems in future. So, Mr. Speaker, I support the mover of this motion and every other person that has spoken before. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
This Honorable Pajok.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. My name is Edward Pajok. I represent the South, the East of Plateau State. Mr. Speaker, I will start on a spiritual note. Many years ago, I attended an environmental conference, and I learned that the first profession in the whole world is on the environment. I said, why? They said, because the very first thing God did was to say, let there be light, let there be this, meaning it was dealing with issues of the environment. In fact, the issue, not that he said, issue of crisis on the environment. The very first crisis, when God created Adam and Eve, was in the Garden of Eden. God said, don't eat that fruit. Only God knows why he said, don't eat that fruit, because out of the environmental abundance in the Garden of Eden. But when man decided to go and eat the fruit which God said, don't eat, since then, there has been crisis in the whole world. So, Mr. Speaker, this issue of environmental crisis is so important right from the very beginning of the world up till now.
Order, please.
God,
order, honorable colleagues.
Our brother,
order.
Honorable Kislitinda has said we need to look at this issue of clean up of not only Ogoniland but the entire country. Mr. Speaker, our president came here last week and
Honorable Musa Ado.
the national
Musa
budget
Ado.
for 2018.
Silence.
In the budget, part of the indices for the financial health or recovery of our economy next year is also hinged on the fact that we need to produce at least 2.3 million barrels of oil per day. Mr. Speaker, it goes without saying that if we do not handle issues of the environment and also the happiness of our brothers from the Niger Delta, we may not hit that mark of 2.3 million barrels per day. And that will affect the economic health of our country. So I think that today, if this parliament, the House of the People, stands to support this good motion raised by our brother, Honorable Kislitinda, there may be environmental peace. And our colleagues and brothers and kith and kin will now say, yes, other Nigerians who are here in this parliament empathize with them. Mr. Speaker, I also recall that many years ago, when the military government then sentenced to death and executed Ken Saro-Wiwa, I think it's because we didn't have the rule of law. There was no democracy at that time. But today, we are enjoying no democracy. So this is a time where we are saying as a parliament that because there is democracy, we will handle all environmental issues, all issues of injustice, so that there will be happiness and there will be peace in the country. Mr. Speaker, before I sit down, even in the area where I come from, Plateau State, there are environmental issues. Nigeria used to benefit from tin mining. Seems to be a reverse on even this ozone layer depletion because of the harmful industrial activities of human beings. So this is a wake-up call on the federal government and the Ministry of Environment to do the needful so that we do not destroy our own environment. I thank Mr. Speaker for this opportunity to contribute to this debate. Thank you, sir.
My name is Honorable Yakub.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. my honorable colleagues. My name is Yakub Abiodun Balogun. I represent the very industrious people of Lagos Island 2 Federal Constituency. I am from Lagos State. I also stand before you today to support this very important motion. In fact, it will go a long way to improve and ameliorate the lives of our people over there, and by extension, all Nigerians and those in the neighboring countries. But I want to state that if an aspect of the motion goes unchallenged or goes unameliorated, it may be thought that it is the entire House that actually said that statement. That all that is being done now by the current government, which happens to be one of the most sensitive and very concerned governments we have gotten in Nigeria, if we do not correct that statement, that all that is being done now, a situation where the vice president had to be in Ogoni to flag off the cleanliness program of the place, is regarded in the speech as a cosmetic something. I believe it is too early for us to say nothing is being done. So I just rise to say that we should not be party to calling that program a cosmetic program until we are actually sure that it is cosmetic indeed. Thank you very much, sir.
Honorable colleagues, order, please, order. Order.
The Bielsa caucus, you have to interpolate between yourself who should speak, between Henry and Fred, one of you. I recognize just one. So, okay, are we yielding to seniority here? Then Henry can speak. Okay, Fred.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. Agbedi Yetiemne Frederick is my name. I represent Sagbama Krema Federal Constituency. I am from Bayelsa State. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, it's a sad day for those who believe in the environment. A sad day for those of us who come from the Niger Delta, that the Ogoni killings took place on this day. Great men like Ken Saro-Wiwa and others lost their lives in fighting for the environment. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, we are all aware that when the issues of lead happened in Zamfara, a number of people lost their lives because proper remediations have not been done at any time in this country. And what are we speaking to? We are speaking to issues of remediation. Yes, we like to make money from the environment. We like to see how much revenue we can get from the environment. But do we pay attention to remediation? Wherever it is, wherever it happens, wherever the environment is degraded, if it were in democracy, I know that most of these people wouldn't have lost their lives. But because it was a dictatorship government. But today, it is our duty and responsibility to call government attention to the fact that remediation is important. Wherever, for whatever reason that the environment is being degraded, there should be remediation. We shouldn't be thinking about revenue all the time. We should be able to also give back to the environment so that our people will be able to live a clean life. So I support this motion in its entirety, and I thank Honorable Shinda for bringing this motion. I so support, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues.
Honorable Sani Zoro.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Speaker, my esteemed colleagues, I am Mohammed Sani Zoro representing Gumel, Gagarawa, Suletan Karkar, a Megatari Federal constituency in Jigawa State. Honorable Speaker, sir, in supporting this motion, I think all the significance attached to the motion have already been highlighted. I just want to reinforce it by quoting Chapter 2 of the Constitution, which has also talked about the environmental objectives of the Nigerian state. And with your permission, the Honorable Speaker, may I read Section 20, which says, the state shall protect and improve the environment and safeguard the water, air and land, forest and wildlife of Nigeria. So the motion by the Most Honorable Chin is not only apt, it goes actually to give effect to this very important provision under Chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution. Having said that, the Honorable Speaker, I also want to draw our attention to the fact that we in this chamber are particularly lucky that we have a green chamber. The green chamber, for me, also should symbolize our environmental consciousness. Probably at a later time, when the House may consider a rebranding, there is the need probably to even declare the chamber as an environmentally friendly chamber, so that when we have visitors or when we are being projected, we will truly be seen to be environmentally conscious. There is hardly any political zone, there is hardly any parts of Nigeria that is not undergoing, challenges that today's environment, have brought up. In our own part of the country, for instance, where I represent, the arid region of Nigeria, there are issues of such nature that have been thrown up by climate change, deforestation, as well as other issues that are in the realm of environmental degradation. So I fully support the motion by Most Honorable Chinda and all those who have subscribed, to it, and truly enjoying that this House should go further to identify with the struggle for the preservation of the environment by considering, our chamber as an environmentally, conscious chamber. Thank you very much.
Honorable Nam Obi and then Honorable John Marapo will round up the debate.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker and my colleagues. My name is Uche Namobi, and I represent the good people of Ahodo West and Oba Ibem and Doni Federal Constituency. I'm from River State. Mr. Speaker, I am very delighted, as sad as it is, that this particular day has been dedicated and is given the seriousness it deserves as regards the people who paid the supreme price. We have the foremost environmentalist, Councillor Wiwa, and the other Ogonis who were gruesomely murdered. Ordinarily, but for the sentimental aspect of it, I would have moved that these great men, these Nigerians, be immortalized. I say this because I am from River State. I say this because we have gone through a lot over the years. I come from a community where oil spillage is the order of the day. I come from a town where we don't sleep because of gas flaring. I come from an area where the IOCs do not take us very seriously. Yet we are Nigerians. We are here and this is the people's house. I stand here to be corrected that the kind of peace that survives is the one that is rooted in justice. What we call for is remediation. What we're here for is asking for justice, that the Nigerians be treated as Nigerians, and every part of Nigeria that goes through any form of environmental or ecological problem be addressed. If we look at the Ogoni cleanup, if that is the starting point for the Niger Delta, I believe having flagged it up, the Nigerian state, and I call on the president to do the needful. He was here just a few days ago. Let it not be lip service. Let lip service not be paid to the people of this country, because Nigerians are more deserving of the charade that goes on. I come here to say this, that once this is done, it will be a better place. The militancy and the agitations will actually be taken care of. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I move that if it is possible, that these men be immortalized. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable John.
Mr. Speaker, distinguished honorable members, my name is Onyemechi Mrakwo. I represent Anyocha Oshimili Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, thank you for this privilege. Mr. Speaker, distinguished honorable members, I arise this day to support this motion. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say that in remembering Ken Saro-Wiwa and the others, we should ask ourselves some pertinent questions. One of such questions, Mr. Speaker, is 22 years after, what is the position of the environment today? 22 years after, has the environment become better than what it was when the agitation led to the loss of life? Mr. Speaker, of course, the answer is clear. The environment is more damaged, polluted, bastardized. It's gotten worse that the people in the Niger Delta today cannot afford clean water. Mr. Speaker, I also want us to look at the issue of agitation quickly. When a man is agitating over a thing, you might kill the ideologist, but you cannot kill the idea behind that man. 5, to clamor that they should have a benefit from the environment that is bastardized in order to feed the whole nation. The Niger Delta people, are they justified to cry out about what the position of Niger Delta is today? Mr. Speaker, distinguished honorable members, yes, it's beautiful for us to stand up 1 minute silent, it does not take anything, but the question is, what is the position of the environment today, 22 years after? As a people, as Nigerian people, as the people of Niger Delta, are we happy? Has it gotten better? If the dead can see, can Ken Saro-Wiwa look up and say, for what I died for, it is better today? That is the question for all of us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I think we've come to the end of this debate, and we've devoted quite some time debating the issues. The only issue that's not too clear to me is the issue of the 1 minute silence in honor of those who lost their lives, so that the House is properly guarded. I don't know whether we can observe a minute's silence on behalf of those who were killed in consequence of court judgment. That's what I'm not too sure of. Whatever is worth doing well. Honorable Pajok, do you have any perspective on that, please?
Right, Honorable Speaker, my name is Edward Pajok. I think, Mr. Speaker, I started off my debate by saying I'm going spiritual. I still remain on the spiritual lane. Because truly, legally speaking, that time it was Honorable Justice Ibrahim Auta who led the military tribunal that was set up by the Abacha government. And Mr. Speaker, if you recall, at that time, after the judgment, there was an appeal against the judgment. Even before the appeal had been determined, then the man was executed. So there seems to be some legal lacuna, even if you're looking at it from the legal perspective, that was it right to have executed them even before their right of appeal was exhausted? Then there's the moral and the spiritual angle, that we're empathizing with human beings, our fellow Nigerians, who we are championing the cause of the environment. All of us today were here, like Honorable Sani Zoro said, this is the green chamber, and green connotes the environment. So even to show that we're empathizing with the people of the Niger Delta, because Ken Saro-Wiwa, whether he was justly or unjustly killed, symbolizes the struggle of the people of the Niger Delta to keep the environment whole. And we're saying all of us today in Nigeria to keep the environment whole. So, Mr. Speaker, based on that reason, I urge that let us observe that minute silence to reinforce the fact that Nigeria of today is for maintaining the environment. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, Honorable Ali Umadaki, any senior advocate?
I am not part of your profession, Speaker, but truly sometimes I used to say how I wish I have studied law, because I just like this your profession. But what I want to say, Mr. Speaker, is to borrow from where he started and then he caught up. Mr. Speaker, when something has gone through a process that is recognized by law. I was telling my brother here, I support everything he said in his motion. But the issue of that 1 minute silence is what I'm asking my mind, because I don't want us to set a precedent where tomorrow somebody who has been legally convicted will come here and say, we observe a minute's silence. We are now saying that the law used or the process was wrong. So that's what I'm just trying the House or you as a speaker to look at before we proceed further. Thank you.
Honorable Professor Mojit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm Professor Majid Alabi. I represent the North and the South, Egbedo Re and Ejigbo Federal Constituency. And I'm from the state of Osun. Mr. Speaker, I'm an advocate of sound environment. I was also an adult and a well-informed adult when Ken Saro-Wiwa was killed outside the completion of the judicial process. And therefore, I have nothing against the motion. But we must ask ourselves, when something is an act of the state, aren't there procedure for reversal of such? Because whether legally or illegally, no one has been found of murdering Ken Saro-Wiwa. Why? Simply because the person who ordered that he be killed at that time was acting on behalf of the Nigerian state. Now the Nigerian state wants to undo what it did in the past. I doubt whether it will be proper for us to observe 1 minute silence. Otherwise, several people, Nigeria have gone through years of military coup d'etat. And we are currently in a democracy. As Democrats, we ought not to glorify past military takeover of power. Yet there have been people who have been executed. In fact, the General Olusegun Obasanjo was almost executed before the intervention of God. These are acts of state. And to do anything against those without following the normal procedure of reversing them will be a contradiction in terms. Mr. Speaker, I support the motion, but I don't think we need a minute silence.
The House to Chapter 4 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, particularly Section 33, subsection 1. Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I want to read that section. It says, every person has a right to life, and no one shall be deprived intentionally of his life, save in execution of the sentence of a court in respect of a criminal offense of which he has been found guilty in Nigeria. So there is no amount of sympathy, there is no amount of grammar that can change the provisions of that Constitution. As far as we are concerned, Ken Saro-Wiwa was executed based on the sentence that was passed on him and others. And that was constitutional. We cannot go back on it because the Constitution has clearly provided. So I urge the House to at least that aspect of the motion should be stepped down. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Honorable colleagues, my name is Lasso Yusuf. I represent Irepo Odun, Olorundaru, Osogbo Federal Constituency. I'm from the state of Osun. Why I'm trying to put in 1 or 2 words is that in the last 3 or 4 minutes, the substance of the motion itself is about to be subsumed
in a prayer that is very strong, controversial, yet we are burdened with a moral burden. It is a moral burden. You recall, Mr. Speaker, that even before Ken Saro-Wiwa and 7 others were arrested, there were some other killings of other 4 prominent Ogoni people, Edward Kobani and the rest of them. And it was during this same period that whether the killing of Ken Saro-Wiwa or the 4 others actually took place. But Mr. Speaker, before I come back to that, I'm happy that I'm not a lawyer, because in law, like I've always said when I'm presiding, confusion reigns. And I will enjoy our lawyers in the chamber today to go and read what Vice President Professor Yomi Osibajo delivered in a dinner recently, not quite 72 hours ago, where senior advocates of Nigeria were called to a dinner. And lawyers have to be very careful, and that's why I'm appreciating the Speaker for observing that aspect of the motion. And if we are not careful in that controversy, the substance of the motion itself will be lost. And I'm happy that the Chairman of Environment is around now. Mr. Speaker, let me quickly, with your indulgence, go back to the motion itself in 1 minute. It is only in Nigeria where we have things that are run in a manner that we know within ourselves that is not going to be beneficial to us. All over the world, where oil is exploited for economic matters, there are always clauses that safeguard the nation and the environment. And in fact, Ken Saro-Wiwa started the environmental thing when it was no longer feasible for them to get the reprieve they wanted in economic matters. And what do I mean? First, oil was found in Nigeria in 1956, and we started the commercial exploitation in 1958. But we've never seen any part of our laws binding the oil exploitation in Nigeria, which says that oil wells should be given back to the state after some few years. It's embedded everywhere all over the world where you have carbon, being exploited. What does that mean? We are undertaking under PIB matters now. That alone is as important. That alone is as important. I'm not bringing that motion to future PIB. That there must be clauses there where oil wells should be returned to state after some time. Those clauses are no longer there. Again, I want to follow the argument of Honorable Balogun that the word cosmetic must not be used. We are being hampered. Ogoni cleanup is supposed to have started some 6 months ago or more than that. And why it has not started now, we must know. Yes, it's our government, but we must know. Because if you watch Ogoni land, either on television, and in those days when Ken Saro-Wiwa went to go and present to the UN, you feel sorry for the environment. So these are things that must not be lost on us, so that the issue of having a minute silence does not now subsume the substance of the motion. So I will advise all the lawyers from Professor Majid to Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Pajok, to Chinda himself, who is the mover of the motion, to see that aspect and probably quietly step it down so that the substance of the motion will live with us. Because as it is now, and as it's likely to be in future, we still don't have the remedies that will guard against what happened in Ogoni land. And I doubt if there are clauses in the current PIB bill that will safeguard the way we run our environment when it comes to mineral resources exploitation. And that is the most important thing. Mr. Speaker, I'm enjoining the House, particularly all the committees that are relevant to oil and gas, the PIB people, to make sure that our environment is far the most important before we even start to talk about the economic values that we are likely to gain from us. So Honorable Chinda, as a lawyer, because it's controversial, though we have moral body. And don't forget, like I said, it was not only Ken Saro-Wiwa and 7 others. I remember that it's only Ledon meeting that was lucky enough to escape that thing. There were others in all, that could have been about 11 or 12 people that were actually killed. So by that alone, if we are appreciating and giving a minute of silence, even to half of that, then we already have a moral body on ourselves by telling ourselves that Edward Kobani and the rest and the three others were not also Ogoni leaders. So, Mr. Speaker, based on that, I advise Honorable Chinda to please take a step to withdraw that part. Then we can now deal with the substance of the motion so that those substances are not lost in us. Thank you very much.
Well, in order not to throw away the baby and the bathwater, I recognize Honorable Wayo to move that we amend the prayers of the motion to drop this one that we are not 100% certain of how to proceed on. Honorable Wayo, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am Honorable Benjamin Yorembe Wayo. I represent the good people of Kwande, Uchongo Federal Constituency. I am from Benue State, the food basket of the nation. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I move that to amend the prayer aspect of the motion that says the House should observe a minute's silence in honor of Ken Saro-Wiwa and others that were executed. I opine that that prayer should be dropped and the motion be carried.
Okay, the amendment is that we delete that specific prayer. Seconder, Honorable Rima.
Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, my name is Rumande Shaulu Kwewum, representing Takum, Donga, Usa, and Yangtu Federal Constituency in Taraba State. I rise to second the amendment as ably moved by Honorable Wayo. I do second.
Those in favor of the amendment say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Those in favor of the motion as amended say aye. Those against it say nay. The ayes have it. Honorable members, first business of the presentation of 5 bills. Clerk is hereby invited to read the short titles.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, Nigerian Financial Intelligence Agency Establishment Bill 2017, first reading. Hate Speech Prohibition Bill 2017, first reading. Nigerian Tourism Development Authority Act, Repeal and Reenactment Bill 2017, first reading. Hydroelectric Power Producing Areas Development Commission Establishment ex Atira Act, Amendment Bill 2017, first reading. Presidential Inauguration Bill 2017, first reading.
Honorable colleagues, second business of the day's presentation report of Committee on Aid, Loans and Debt Management, request for the approval of external loans for issuance of USD 2.5 billion in the international capital market through Eurobonds, or a combination of Eurobonds and diaspora bonds for the finance of the federal government.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, my respected colleagues. My name is Adeyinka Ajayi. I represent the people of Odo-Oti, Ifelodu, and Boripe local governments. Mr. Speaker, I am from the state of Osun. Mr. Speaker, may I move that the House do receive the report of the Committee on Aid, Loans and Debt Management on the request for the approval of external loans for issuance of 2.5 billion United States dollars in the international capital market through Eurobonds or a combination of Eurobonds and diaspora bonds for the financing of the Federal Government of Nigeria 2017 Appropriation Act and capital expenditure projects, and issuance of $3 billion United States dollars Eurobond in the international capital market and or local loan syndication by banks for the refinancing of maturing debt, domestic debt obligations of the federal government. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Nana, second, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. Raphael Nana Ibokwe is my name. I represent the good people of I House, Ezinit Federal Constituency of Imo State. Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the motion as moved by Honorable Adeyinka Ajayi. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. The ayes have it. Honorable Ajayi, please proceed and lay the report. All the naysayers are not seated on their seats. Honorable Chika and Bashir, you are not seated on your rightful seat. So whatever you say will not be recognized.
Order, please.
Honorable members, the third business of the day is presentation of 3 reports of the Committee on Ports, Harbors and Waterways. Standing in the name of Honorable Patrick Asadu, honorable members who recall the bills were referred to the committee on Thursday, 21st July 2016, Thursday, 15 December 2016, and Tuesday, 26 February 2017, respectively.
Mr. Speaker, that the House will receive the report of the Committee on Ports and Harbor and Waterways on a bill for an act to repeal the National Inland Waterways Authority Act, Chapter M47, Laws of the Federation 2004, and to reenact the Nigerian Inland Waterways Act, establish the Nigerian Inland Waterways Authority to provide for the management, regulation, and development of the Nigerian Inland Waterways, and to provide private sector participation in the development of the Nigerian Inland Waterways and for related matters. Thank you.
Any seconder? Honorable Gadaka.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I am Honorable Ismail Ahmed Gadaka, member representing FICA, Fune Federal Constituency from Yobe State. I rise to second that the bill be received on behalf of for an act of heavily presented by Honorable Deputy Speaker, Deputy Chairman, Ports and Harbors.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Honorable Ajana, please proceed and lay the reports. First order of the day is consolidation of 2 bills. You should have read everything together.
Inland Shipping, Cabotage Act, and for related matters. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I hope you have read everything. Honorable, good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable members, my name is Goodluck Opia. I'm from Imo State and represent Ahajemema Uguta and Doru West. Mr. Speaker, I stand to second the motion ably moved by the Deputy Chairman, Committee on Ports, Harbor and Waterways. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Honorable Judge, please proceed and lay the reports. First order of the day is consolidation of 2 bills. Honorable members may wish to note the bills are on the same subject matter. And I invite the Chairman, Committee on Rules and Business, to move the bills be now consolidated.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I represent the good people of Buruku, my dear colleagues. I'm from Benue State. I rise to move that a bill for an act to amend the Tertiary Education Trust Fund Establishment Act 20
Constituency. Mr. Speaker, I'm from the source. Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the motion that bills 967 and 1057 be consolidated I so second, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Committee on Rules and Business, please schedule a date for the commencement of debates on the general principles of the bill. Second order of the day is commencement of debate on the general principles of Bill for an Act to amend the Federal Universities of Agriculture Act, Chapter F, 22, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, to specify the minimum qualifications of the chairman of the governing council, ownership of intellectual property, and provide for pre-action notice to the university authority and for related matters, standing in the name of Honorable Mohammed Tahir Monguno. Honorable members who recall the bill was read the first time on Tuesday, 26 September 2017. I now invite Honorable Monguno to move the bill be now read the second time.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, my name is Honorable Mohammed Tahir Monguno. I represent Martia Monguno Ganzai, Federal Constituency of Borno State. I hereby move that a bill for an act to amend the Federal Universities of Agriculture Act, CAF F22, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, to specify the minimum qualification of the chairman of the governing council, ownership of intellectual property, and to provide for free action notice to the university authority and for related matters. House Bill 1116 be read the second time. I so move.
Any seconder? Seconder, Honorable Mohammed Jaga.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, my honorable colleagues. I rise to second the motion. I am Mohammed Umar Jaga, representing Alerogondu Jaga Federal Constituency from Kebbi State. I rise to second the motion, ably moved by my honorable colleague. I so second. Thank you.
Honorable MT, you cannot lead the debate.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, human memory being momentary, I want to seize this opportunity to refresh the memory of the membership of this House that this bill is in a series of bills that this House seeks to amend the Establishment Act of various universities to bring it in conformity with the best international practice. So this bill is sui generis with the bills that have earlier passed by this House, and therefore all the arguments that was previously canvassed by the sponsors of the previous bill, mutatis mutandis, applies to the argument that I'm going to make in the course of arguing for the second reading of this bill. Mr. Speaker, this bill essentially seeks to amend Section 7, Section 12, and Section 1 of the Federal Universities of Agriculture Act. Section 7 seeks to amend the qualification for the appointment of the Pro-Chancellor and Chairman of the Governing Council, so that it will not be an all-comers appear. There should be a specific and well-defined qualification for anybody that is going to be appointed as Chairman and Pro-Chancellor of the university, because the universities are citadel of learning, and therefore for anybody to head the administration of the universities, a clear qualification must be enshrined in the Establishment Act for its appointment. And then the other amendment with regard to amendment of Section 12 deals with protection of intellectual property. It is a well-known fact that in universities there is a lot of publications that is being done property governance, specifically with a view to guarding it against plagiarism. Then Section 21 specifically seeks to amend the Act to bring it in tandem with best practice in all agencies and institutions of government, whereby universities will not be taken by surprise, will not be inundated with a litany of litigation, and therefore this amendment seeks to give notice of intention to sue to the university before any staff, academic or non-academic, or even somebody outside the university takes the university to court. Then the other amendment seeks to democratize the appointment of deputy deans and deputy deans to bring it with international best practice as is obtained in other climes. So as I told you earlier, this amendment is not contentious. It is similar to what that the arguments that have been earlier canvassed in the House, and this House has unanimously passed it, and therefore I am craving for the indulgence of this House to also unanimously pass the amendment of the Federal Universities of Agriculture Act. Thank you.
This is a straightforward argument and straightforward bill. I don't think it calls for any further complication of the arguments. We've taken so many of these kind of arguments in respect of all the institutions of higher learning in the country, so I'll put the question. And the question is the bill will be now read a second time. Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Clerk is now invited to read the long title of the bill.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, a bill for an act to amend the Federal Universities of Agriculture Act, Chapter F22, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, to specify the minimum qualification of the chairman of the governing council, ownership of intellectual property, and to provide for pre-action notice to the university authority and for related matters. Second reading.
Country as it facilitates the movement of people and goods within the axis and also serves as an access route to the south-south zone of the country. The House is also aware that many sections of the road have dilapidated and are hardly motorable, particularly the Olase-Okeja Bridge, which is on the verge of collapsing as a result of overflooding from the incessant heavy downpours in the southeast zone, as well as the depression which is taking a toll on the bridge due to heavy vehicular use. The House is also concerned that with the brittle ecological nature of the area, considering how prone it is to erosion, a total collapse of the bridge will be more devastating to the people. The House resolves, 1, urge the Federal Road Maintenance Agency, FEMA, to urgently embark on an assessment of the Olase-Okeja Bridge with a view to making adequate provisions for its immediate reinforcement, reconstruction, and 2, mandate the Committee on FEMA and Works to ensure the inclusion of the reconstruction of the bridge in the 2018 budget. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
The second, Honorable Emeka Jr.
Your Excellency, honorable members, honorable colleagues, I'm Honorable Dr. Chukwuemeka Ujam. I represent the good people of Nkano East and Nkano West Federal Constituency. I'm from Enugu State, and I'm the school son to the person that moved the motion. Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the motion as ably moved by my colleague, Honorable Emeka Anaho, that has come today for the first time in a long absence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Motion borders on infrastructure, and I'll put the question in line with the provisions of our rules. Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Fourth order of the day, honorable colleagues, the motion on call for reconstruction and upgrading of Kano Gumel Maigatari Federal Highway into Trong A Road. Standing in the name of Honorable Sani Zoro, Honorable Zoro is now invited to move the motion.
Thank you very much, the Honorable Speaker, my esteemed colleagues. Sani Zoro, representing the good people of Gumel, Maigatari, Suletan Karkar, and Gagara Federal High constituency. Mr. Speaker, I rise to move a motion for the reconstruction and upgrading of the Kano Gumel Maigatari Federal Highway and to transform it into a trunk A road. The House notes that the federal highway linking Kano with Niger Republic through Gumel and the border town of Maigatari in Jigawa State has continued to serve as a major trade corridor for agricultural products, especially livestock, to various parts of Nigeria since pre-colonial times. Aware that the Megateri livestock market in Jigawa State is among the officially gazetted Nigerian markets with an export processing zone status, immigration, customs, and mounted troops facilities, and being a gateway to Niger Republic, concerned about the deplorable state of the Trunk B road, which has remained a major cause of accidents, especially between Gumel and Megateri, a 26 kilometers distance, leading to a loss of lives and property on frequent.
Gwaram Federal Constituency. I am from Jigawa State. Honorable Speaker, honorable colleagues, I rise to second the motion eloquently moved by Honorable Saluzoro. I so second. Thank you.
It's a motion bordering on the provision of infrastructure and in line with the provisions of our relevant rules. I put the question. And question is that those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. The fifth order of the day, honorable colleagues, is a motion on call to include construction of the road connecting Saki to the proposed Okerete International Border Market in the 2018 budget, standing in the name of Honorable Olajide Olatubosun. Honorable Olatubosun is now invited to move the motion. Olatubosun.
Mr. Speaker, apparently Honorable Olajide is not on the floor. Therefore, move that will step down item number 5 on the order paper. I so move.
Fifth item on the order paper, step down by leave of the House. Sixth order of the day, honorable colleagues, the motion on need to check the menace of gully erosion in Jahun, Aujara, and Harbour towns in Jahun local government area of Jigawa State, standing in the name of Honorable Saidu Yusuf Miga. Honorable Miga is now invited to move the motion. Honorable Miga. Honorable Miga is not on the floor.
Indeed, Mr. Speaker is not on the floor. I therefore move that we down item number 6 on the order paper. I so move.
Item number 6 on the order paper, step down by leave of the House. Seventh order of the day, honorable colleagues, a motion on need to investigate the violation of the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Development Act, NOGICD 2010, in the refusal of international oil and gas companies to use local assets and marine facilities owned by Nigerian companies, standing in the name of Honorable Daniel Reneju. Honorable Reneju is now invited to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, my honorable colleagues. I remain Honorable Daniel Reneju. I represent Warri Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, I'm from Delta State. Mr. Speaker, the need to investigate the violation of the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Development Act, NOGICD 2010, in the refusal of international oil and gas companies to use local assets and marine facilities owned by Nigerian companies. The House notes that the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Development Act, NOGIC 2010, was enacted to ensure measurable growth of Nigerian content in oil and gas exploitation processes. Also notes that Section 12 of the Act provides that first consideration will be given to Nigerian goods and services in the evaluation of bids for goods and services required for the oil and gas companies. Further notes that Section 15 of the Act requires all operators and alliance partners to give full and fair opportunities to indigenous contractors and companies in the award of contracts. Aware that indigenous companies had spent money to procure vessels
which are now lying fallow at the ports, as the IOCs and multinational oil companies have refused to engage their services and would rather engage the services of foreign vessels that are not flying the Nigerian flags and sometimes working through Nigerian companies as decoy. Determined to put an end to this flagrant violation of the Oil and Gas Industry Content Development Act 2010 by international companies, oil and gas companies, the House hereby resolves to mandate the Committee on Local Content to investigate the process of engaging vessels by international oil and gas companies with a view to determining whether the processes comply with the provisions of the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Development Act of 2010 and report back to the House within 4 weeks for further legislative action. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Any seconder? Honorable Lamide.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Honorable Lamide. I represent Ijero, Ekiti West, and I'm from Federal Constituency of Ekiti State. I rise to second the motion assembly moved by Honorable Remeju. I so second.
Honorable Dan, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, my honorable colleagues. I remain Honorable Daniel Reneju, representing Warri Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, I'm from Delta State. My colleagues, I am going to try as much as possible to be very brief with this motion. And I will do this because it's an investigative motion, and I will try as much as possible not to be judgmental until the House approves the motion to be investigated. Mr. Speaker, my honorable colleagues will remember that this House in 2010 passed the Local Content Development Act. And for me, as a member of the Petroleum Committee upstream in 2010 in the 6th Assembly, this was the first bill that I had my name attached to. The law in 2010 has actually, succeeded in galvanizing a lot of resources from local participation or participants in the oil and gas industry. Mr. Speaker, but one of the major responsibilities of the Local Content Board is not just to raise revenue to develop the local content. It is also to encourage local participants in the oil and gas industry. Mr. Speaker, the question now is, in the marine sector, which is a very huge sector in the oil and gas industry, are the people actually getting value for what the National Assembly has passed, which is the local content? The answer to me is no. Mr. Speaker, a lot of Nigerian young businessmen who have been in this business for quite some time have gone into the banks to borrow money, to buy platforms in the sense of vessels, to actually participate in these industries. But unfortunately, what we see in return, instead of the IOCs patronizing the local participants, they prefer to patronize the foreign participants, giving an edge over us. Most of these vessels have been bought, they are all lying packed in the ports. The banks are on their necks, their vessels are not being patronized, and as such, Nigerians are indebted, running into millions and billions of dollars in various banks. Mr. Speaker, like I said, I am not going to go too deep into this motion because I believe it is going to be investigative, and because it's going to be investigative, in order for us not to be judgmental, I would want to say that I want to crave the indulgence of this House, Mr. Speaker, that this motion be allowed to go through so that it can be thoroughly investigated, so that the essence of the act being passed in 2010 can be adequately, supportive of the Nigerian local participants in the oil and gas industry. Mr. Speaker, my honorable colleagues, this is the little I will have to say until the House actually allows this motion to go through. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, my colleagues. I so move.
Any further contributions? Honorable Sergius Ogun.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, my highly esteemed colleagues. I'm Sergius Ose Ogun. I represent Esan Southeast, Esan Northeast, and I'm from Edo State. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the mover of this motion, and just to add a little to what he said already. We appreciate the act because since this act, a lot has happened in the industry. By the mere fact that local companies are now being patronized. But I've always said that we should not take our eyes off the ball, which is what is happening right now. Like the mover of the motion said, just made mention of the fact that the local companies take loans at almost 25% or 28% to buy or build these vessels. If at the end of the day, they are not considered for projects, Mr. Speaker, you can already tell the end of such companies. And these are the companies that will hire local people, that will hire Nigerians. So I think we should support this motion to pass, and we should look into this. Otherwise, they will cripple our economy. And whenever we have crisis in this country, the same multinationals are the first to go. But we are locals. We are not going anywhere. We are here. So we either swim together or we drown together. So for that reason, Mr. Speaker, my highly esteemed colleagues, I will appreciate that we consider this motion and support it. Thank you, sir.
Honorable Sergius, by saying we are the locals, we don't have anywhere to go, are you declaring your interest in the matter? Honorable Fred, as long as you declare your interest before contributing.
Honorable Speaker, honorable colleagues, no interest, sir. Agbedi Yetiemne Frederick is my name. I represent Sagbama Kirima Federal Constituency. I am from Bayelsa State. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, this motion is very, very crucial. Crucial, one, in ensuring that the law is complied with. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, the second angle of it is that there are negative reactions coming out of the industry, particularly when you see players in the industry, indigenes who are now professionals, who are themselves capable of carrying out these functions, these duties, these responsibilities, anywhere in the world, are deprived of access to these service contracts in the industry that are intended to grow local participation and local revenue. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, we need to stem this as quickly as possible because it's another time bomb waiting to explode. Mr. Speaker, it is frustrating, disappointing when you have capacity to carry out a particular responsibility, and someone that you see that don't have the level of experience and competence you have coming to carry out that same responsibility in an industry that you are ready to invest so much is very, very disappointing and frustrating. And of course, because we are the people's representatives, we need to take quick and adequate action to stem another tide of reaction, negative reaction, that is likely going to play out in the industry. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, it is when you are close to what is happening in the industry that you will understand the import of this motion. This motion is speaking to the heart of the people, is speaking to the heart of the industry, is speaking, is...
Honorable Dao Magaja's point of order. What is the What order are you raising? Section 1, 36.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Honorable Magaji Dao Aliu. I represent people of Brunukudu Bojipere constituency. Mr. Speaker, I'm from Jigawa State. Mr. Speaker, this is a very good motion, but it seems to be investigative. So for essence of fair hearing as inherent in our constitution, we should not debate it, Mr. Speaker. So you should put the question. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
House Leader.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to contribute to the debate, but I don't know if you want to rule on. Well, let me.
Oh, okay. Why are you debating? Because Fred has not rounded up. Okay, Honorable Magaji, we are not seated here in judgment. We are not delivering a judgment. So whatever we're saying may lead to the investigation proper, where parties will be given the opportunity to be listened to be heard before the House can take a decision. Whatever we're saying here is not a judgment. We're not delivering any judgment. It's just to add on to the issues that are to be taken up, so that whoever is conducting the investigation may be better enlightened. So, Honorable Fred, please round up, and then the leader will round up the debates in total.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. To sum it up, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, one is emphasizing the importance of this motion, how critical it is to revenue, how critical it is to employment, how critical it is for people to participate in a business that is found within their nation. And so, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion in its entirety, and I urge members of this House, the People's House, to support this motion. I so support.
Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mine is just to add one or two points to the debate and the motion which I support fully and in its entirety. But in contributing, let me add, going by Honorable Magaji's observation, I will say, if true, I will add that to every sentence, that if true, Mr. Speaker, then the issue involves issue of economic colonization. If true, Mr. Speaker, this issue involves the issue of capital flight. If allegations are true, then it involves the issue of employment, which is a problem we have in Nigeria today. But Mr. Speaker, my only caveat is this, going by the prayer. Mr. Speaker, going by the prayer, I would want to amend it, because the prayer as it stands is too general and too wide. It talks about investigating based on the 2010 Act. But I believe a lot of people have complained to me about this issue. But when they complain, they go back to 2008, 2009, 2007 bidding processes, which started way before the Local Content Act. And we are all aware that you cannot have retroactive laws. So this motion, as good as it is, and I support it, the prayer should restrict itself to contracts and bidding processes that started from the passage of the 2010 Act. We cannot reach back to 2008, 2009, 2007, because that means that we are enforcing retroactive laws, which is against even our Constitution. And that is my amendment to this prayer. I so move.
So I put the question. Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. The ayes have it. Amendment after I have. We've already ruled, leader. But before I put the question, you should have drawn my attention to the fact that there was an amendment on the floor. What's the amendment?
Because I have been informed about, a lot of people have come up on this issue of non-compliance with the Local Content Act. But we must know that the Local Content Act, I support the motion, was passed in 2010. And people are talking about acts or contracts or biddings that was done in 2008, 2009, 2007. The prayer is very wide. We cannot have retroactive laws. So I wanted us to restrict that prayer to bidding processes and contracts that occurred from the moment the 2010 Local Content Act was passed. That was the amendment. So that we don't go on a fishing expedition way back to 2005, 2006, 2007 when it could not have been retroactive.
No, in a democracy, laws cannot have retrospective effect. So even if there's that kind of investigation, I don't think they'll go anywhere. But in order to be properly guided, any seconder, Honorable Obina.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker, honorable colleagues. My name is Obina Chidoka, representing Idemili North, Idemili South Federal Constituency. I rise this afternoon, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, to second the amendment as moved by the Leader of the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, that ruling was taken when the amendment was already on the floor, and you can now see the reason why we insist that the chair shouldn't be disturbed. So that fault is squarely on the member who was talking to me. I missed that. So that is why we're reversing ourselves and we'll take the amendment. Those in favor of the amendment say aye. Those against it say nay. The ayes have it. They are distracting me further. The ayes have it. Anyone who is not on his seat, I will not listen. Francis, go back to your seat. Those in favor of the motion as amended say aye. Those against it say nay. The ayes have it. There was no way that amendment could be defeated. Even if it is defeated, it's just waste of time. You can't pass a law today and say it should have effect 3 years before the law was passed. So it's better we're properly guarded. We'll go to the next item. The eighth order of the day is consideration and report of the Committee on Loans and Debt Management on the request for the approval of external loans for issuance of USD $2.5 billion in the international capital market through Eurobonds or a combination of Eurobonds and diaspora bonds for the financing of the Federal Government of Nigeria 2017 Appropriation Act and capital expenditure projects. An issuance of $3 billion USD Eurobond in the international capital market and will loan syndication by banks for the refinancing maturing domestic debt obligations of the federal government. Honorable members, who report was laid on Tuesday, 14th November 2017. Honorable Adeyinka Ajayi will move for its consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, my respected colleagues. I remain Honorable Adeyinka Ajayi. I represent the people of Odo-Oti, fellow and Boricua local governments. Mr. Speaker, I'm from the state of Osun. Mr. Speaker, may I move that the House do consider the report of the Committee on Aid, Loans and Debt Management on the request for the approval of external loans for issuance of United States dollars 2.5 billion in international capital markets through Eurobonds or a combination of Eurobonds and diaspora bonds for the financing of the Federal Government of Nigeria 2017 Appropriation Act and capital expenditure project and issuance of 3 billion Eurobond in the capital market and or loan syndication by banks for the refinancing of maturing debt obligations of the federal government and approve the recommendations therein. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Any seconder? Seconder. Honorable Bungudo.
Mr. Speaker, my honorable colleagues, I remain Honorable Malik Zubairu Bungudu, representing Bungudu Model Federal Constituency of Zamfara State. I rise to second the motion that the report should be considered. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Where's the leader? Move that we dissolve into Committee of Supply to consider the report.
Thank you. I rise to move that this House is up to Committee on Supply to consider Honorable Yinka Ajayi's report. I so move. I'm going to personalize it.
Second, rules and business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the motion as moved by the Leader of the House. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. House dissolve into Committee of Supply to consider the report.
Order.
Honorable colleagues, the recommendations are found on page 340 of our other paper. So I'll now invite the chairman of the relevant committee to give us a synopsis of the report. And thereafter, we'll just consider the recommendation and we're done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, my respected colleagues. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman will recall that the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria presented a request for approval to access the international capital market in order to be able to fund the deficit approved by Parliament in the 2017 Appropriation Act. Mr. Chairman, my respected colleagues will recall that there was a deficit of 2.3 trillion naira in the 2017 Appropriation Act, which was approved to be funded by 1.3 trillion naira from the domestic capital market and 1 trillion and 67 billion naira to be funded from the international capital market, multilateral lending agencies, and so on and so forth. Mr. Chairman, my respected colleague, this request from Mr. President is premised on the remainder of the international capital market borrowing. This House having approved earlier in the year, in June, for the issuance of $300 million diaspora bond, which was successfully floated in June 2017. Mr. Speaker, of that amount of 1.067 trillion naira, there is still a window of $3.2 billion, which is still available for funding the 2017 Appropriation Act. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, my respected colleagues, this request for $2.5 billion is a subcomponent of that, which would translate to, at the official 2017 budget exchange rate of 305 naira to $1 United States dollars, to 792 billion naira to fund specific projects as well as other projects which were highlighted by Mr. President in his communication. These projects include, but are by no way exhaustive, the second runway of the Abuja International Airport, the construction of a 3,050 megawatt Mambila hydropower project, construction of Bodo Boni Road with a bridge across the Opobo Channel in Rivers State, specific railway projects, including but not limited to the Lagos-Kano, Calabar-Lagos, Kano-Kaduna, Ajaokuta-Itakpe, Warri, Kaduna-Idu, and other rail projects which were all captured in the 2017 Appropriation Act. Mr. Chairman, finally, the second component of the request of Mr. President is in respect of the debt conversion program of the federal government presented with the medium-term expenditure framework, which has proposed to rejig the debt structure of our national debt to reduce our exposure in the domestic capital market in favor of foreign borrowing, which are long-term and lower interest rate denominated. Mr. President's request for $3 billion from the Eurobond market is in furtherance of this objective, part of which would enable private sector have better access to funds in the domestic market. It could also have the potential of increasing our national foreign exchange reserve, as well as drawing down lending rates for commercial businesses. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, my respected colleagues, the committee was not unmindful of the foreign exchange risks that may be associated with refinancing our debts from the domestic naira to dollars, but the advantages of so doing in the long term outweighs the risks inherent in this move, particularly given the new focus of the government diversifying the economy and moving away from oil, other productive sectors of the economy that can improve the revenue base of the country. In that respect, Mr. Chairman and my respected colleagues, The committee therefore recommends, as contained in paragraph 6 of the report. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
There's an amendment to prayer 3, to resolution number 3, which you failed to mention. Please highlight that.
Apart from the comment on 3, there is a typographical error contained in the third prayer. On the order paper, it reads that prior approval of the Committee on Aid, Loans and Debt Management shall be sought. Mr. Speaker, is to access the capital market to the tune of 3 billion naira or a loan syndication. In the opinion of the committee, accessing the international capital market is clearly defined and the rules are known to everybody. It's an open market trading situation, just like we do on our stock exchange. The bid process are very open and transparent. But the request to have a loan syndication through banks, in the opinion of the committee, is giving too much latitude that is open to abuse if not properly guided. And in the opinion of the committee, we have recommended for consideration of the House that the approval, prior approval of the National Assembly should be obtained in the event that federal government decides not to approach the capital market for that 3 billion, in the event that it decides to take a syndication from banks, either local or international. That's the rationale behind the third resolution. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Honorable colleagues, you've heard the synopsis of the report, and we'll just go to the resolutions straight, except there's any further information that a member feel compelled we should know. Otherwise, we'll just go to, okay, the Leader of the House.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to point out something that came out of this report. It's not an addition, it's just something we need to take away, which is the resolution number 2, which was necessitated based on what Honorable Ajayi said, because of trying to refinance, and he said because the foreign loans were cheaper, more attractive, and easier to access, and cheaper most especially than the domestic loans. I don't think this speaks well. I don't know the reasons, but I don't think even the optics or the sound of it, that you have to go a borrowing all the way in a foreign country simply because their interest rates are lower and the lifespan of the loan is longer than your own domestic borrowing. I think there's something to be said about that. Again, it's an issue of economic colonization, and I think that we should look at it very seriously and maybe from this look for a way out of that. We should be able to borrow to ourselves rather than borrow to other people. There's capital flight, there's all those things that are perhaps unintended consequences of such. Thank you.
Well, I think they are just being smart, and we all know that there's crisis of liquidity. So the chairman wants to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, the concern of the Leader of the House was really part of the burden that the committee had in considering this request. But what is important is that we are not increasing the debt portfolio by a dime, by a kobo. It is a conversion program. The debt already exists. But if it is denominated the way it is, the interest rate on the debt service which in the 2017 budget was 1.6 trillion, would have been drastically reduced if those debts were denominated in dollars. It's not increasing the debt. It's not a new borrowing. We're just converting. The debts are already there. It's just you're moving away from 14% or 17% interest rate to a 6.7% interest rate. You're moving away from treasury bills of maximum tenure of 1 year to long-term 5-year, 7-year, 10-year denominated bonds. It's just a swap. It's not an increase in portfolio.
Well, I think that's very clear. And I believe that beyond all this, the main issue of converting domestic debt is to inject liquidity into the banks. So we'll take it from resolution number 1. Carried. Resolution 2. Resolution 3. Carried as amended. In the document I have here, it's already amended. So, clerk, you use this particular document, not the other paper. Resolution 4. Resolution 4 is superfluous.
Just thought it's there in House rules, it's there in the law that we have passed the budget. It is the work of the aids and loans to monitor such things. Well, we can have it, but I just thought it was superfluous. It doesn't hurt either way.
Well, maybe it's just for emphasis. You know, in Nigeria, we believe in seeing it in black and white. That's why everything has to be in the Constitution. Our Constitution is like this. Otherwise, the Constitution can be a 5-page document or 7-page document, but everybody wants to see it in black and white. So even if it amounts to overkill, I think it's better to overkill than to underkill in this case. So, resolution 4, carried. I think that's all. Amendment to resolution 4. Sorry, it's a serious one. Please, even if it amounts to setting aside our rules to take it, because this one has to do with the figure itself that we're approving. So, can you please correct it?
Typographical error, Chairman. In the report, in the body of the report, it's captured as.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. House reverts to plenary. Honorable colleagues, the House and the Committee of Supply considered the report of the Committee on AIDS, Loans and Debt Management on the request for the approval of external loans for issuance of USD 2.5 billion in the international capital market through Eurobonds, or a combination of Eurobonds and diaspora bonds for the financing of the Federal Government of Nigeria 2017 Appropriation Act and Capital Expenditure Projects, and issuance of $3 billion Eurobond in the international capital market and or loan syndication by banks for the refinancing of maturing domestic debt obligations of the federal government, and approve recommendations 1 to 3 and approve recommendations 4 of the report as amended. Yes. Leader, please could you move for the adoption of the report?
Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I rise to move for the adoption of the report as considered in the Committee of Supply. I so move.
Rules and business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the motion as moved by the Leader of the House. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Chairman, Rules and Business, please move that we step down other items on the other paper in view of the fact that the chairman of the relevant committee is not on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Okay, Jeff, I represent the good people of Buruku from Benue State. Mr. Speaker, I rise to move that items number 9 and 10 on the other paper be stepped down as Honorable Abonta is not on the floor. I so move.
Items 9 and 10 on the other paper stepped down by leave of the House. Leader, could you move that we adopt the votes and proceedings before we adjourn?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. I rise to move that we adopt the votes and proceedings of today before adjournment. I so move.
Rules and business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the motion for adoption of the votes and proceedings of today as moved by the Leader of the House. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Who is saying nay? Leader, motion for adjournment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. I rise to move that this House adjourn till tomorrow, 11 a.m. I so move.
Rules and business.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the motion for adjournment as moved by the Leader of the House. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Ayes have it. No need for this.